Happy Friday, everybody. I'm Nick Slavic. I'm the proprietor of the Nick Slavic Painting and Restoration Company. I'm also the host of this show, Ask a Painter Live. It's a weekly live Facebook show where I use my over 2 decades of experience as a craftsman and an entrepreneur to answer any questions. And as always, if I don't have the answers, this is the best, largest community of the most knowledgeable craftspeople and business owners in the world here. And we can get you the answers. So this is an open and honest and sharing community. It's not your father's sort of trades anymore where everybody has secrets and everybody's competition. We all want to raise the standards of the industry so that our clients get a better service. We can provide better jobs for our employees, thus attracting more people into the field and then making more money for ourselves, for our families. So, all right, we're going to start off the show here with the contractor question of the week from the PCA, the Paint Contractors Association. And for those of you who have been following along, you know that the big exposition was last week and it was awesome. And I see Chris Shank is on here. Let's see if we can pop him up. Chris Shank, give me a thumbs up if you're ready to go. Awesome. All right, let's get Chris Shank up here and let's talk about Expo, and let's also talk about the contractor question of the week.
How you doing?
All right.
Can you hear me?
There we go. Oh, get rid of the spreadsheet. Beat it, spreadsheet. There we go.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, man. Can you hear me?
Yes. How you doing?
Really good, man. How about you?
Very good. I think there's a little bit of delay here. Do you see the delay?
Yes, absolutely. So on my end, my computer is lagging just a little bit. So I'll be very patient. First of all, I want to show you something. One of the biggest takeaways I had from PCA was one of two things. Let's see if I can pull this up here. Tell me if you recognize this, Chris Shank. Oh, it's too small. Can you read that?
I see it. That's
if this
that's me up there speaking at the beginning of the opening session at the Expo.
Yeah, so this is one of my biggest takeaways, and it was actually from the first couple minutes of the Expo. You did something which was really masterful, and I have to give you kudos for. You guys did 4 TED Talks, like TED-style talks right away. You were the first one, and you set the high mark for public speaking for the entire week. I was getting nervous sitting in my chair after watching yours, like, oh my God, I thought I could command a crowd pretty well, but you, my friend, did an awesome job.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I had a good time. We talked about training and the benefits of training and how it changes people's brains and it changes people's lives. And you have people's their learning is in your hands, which means kind of their fulfillment at work and their sense of job satisfaction, team engagement, which means their happiness is in your hands, which is just a big responsibility, and how training can make such a big difference. And so we were talking about the trade best practice series and how we developed those. And it was fun. It was a really fun thing to do, and got up there and kind of played on stage just a little bit. And then I know to Orlando Hakes went, Ken Tucker and Danny Kerr. And I've heard lots of good things. So we tried something new this year. And the education committee was like, okay, well, let's do this. Let's take a chance on this. And I think it went really well. So we'll probably bring it back next year.
It was. And for those of you guys who didn't catch the slide, spoke near and dear to my heart. Training changes people. And it is absolutely true. So I wrote down two major things from Expo. That was number one. And number two was something I overheard too, which was hard work will get you to the top and character will keep you there.
That's really good. Where'd that come from?
Jason Paris.
That's really good.
But Jason Paris got it from somebody else. I heard it secondhand. So it was kind of like I was a collateral damage on that takeaway. So yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a really good one. I like that a lot. Anyway, loving how successful Expo was and all the good reports I'm hearing. I hear you did a really good job in there too. Had some people come out of your class say that was like, for them, that was their money's worth right there for the Expo. Very, very good. And some people who saw part 1 of your apprenticeship, the modern apprenticeship, and said that they couldn't imagine what else you were going to be talking about, because they thought they heard it all in the part 1, but they said what you got into for part 2, blew their minds as far as numbers and production rates and like what's actually useful, and how do you track progress in production and things like that. It was really good. So
Well, what's interesting is that when I got done with that Modern Apprenticeship 1 and I completed, I was like, there we go, labor crisis solved. Perfect. I got nothing else I can ever talk about. I did not foresee the next problem, which is now you got all these people. Now what the hell do you do with them? And it's like, and the part 2 of the Modern Apprenticeship, it's sort of like chapter 1 and chapter 2 of the whole thing. So yeah, thank you guys for that opportunity. That was so awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. You ready for the contractor question of the week? Okay. So the PCA contractor question of the week is, how often do you paint floors? Any tips or special products and training you found helpful? So I believe that's the question for today, right? If we're on track.
You got it, man. That's the one I prepared for. So it's a good thing we're syncing up here.
That's right.
No, so very interestingly, I used to do a lot of epoxy and oil floor coatings. I was trained in the old school where you acid wash a concrete floor in the cracks, hard putty, and then you use oil enamel on the floor. And that is absolutely not good. But it was the only thing for us before epoxies were around. Then I started using industrial epoxy, which was really good too. We actually just revisited a project I did about 4 or 5 years ago, and the garage looks great. But as science and industry evolves, we do not acid etch concrete floors anymore. When most people paint a floor, we think of concrete floors, garages, things like that. And nowadays, you really have to diamond grind, and that leads us into the Slavic House project, which is 3,200 square feet of concrete flooring with in-ground heat, miles and miles of tubing through there. And in 2 weeks from now, I will be putting down state-of-the-art, water-based, low-odor epoxy in my own house after a diamond grind.
Wow, amazing. And how's progress going on that?
Drywall mudding starts today, and the second I stop this live feed, I'm running out there and checking on the drywaller, because as a painter, what happens in the next week is the most important thing that I will be judged on in this entire project. The quality of a wall finish starts with the drywaller.
Oh, wow. Nice. Cool. So I'm not keeping you from anything, right?
No, man, this is great. Right after this show every week, I check out on family time, and usually my wife and my youngest daughter are kind of hanging around. So we'll go out to the house, we'll check it out, we'll do a video, things like that. So it's good, man. And this is going to be a huge flooring project. I'm teaming up with another local contractor here, another young, super progressive flooring contractor who's a client of mine, but also does epoxy flooring. And he's going to come in and use state-of-the-art grinding equipment. And I'm going to kind of try to get in there with him. And I love that process. And we're going to grind the floors that my kids are going to walk on every day. So
wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have certain products that you like using? And do you provide floor coating services a lot?
Yeah, so I've been to most of the industry certified trainings and product certified trainings that we have. I love them all. It's concrete floorings and other floor coatings are getting to be a little bit specialized to the point where you almost have to have a new division or a specialized team. In the past, when I used to just acid etch a floor and throw on a couple coats of 2-part epoxy, that's great. Any painter can do that with a little bit of knowledge. But nowadays, the systems are more scientifically advanced. You got to use grinding equipment. And although we will do epoxy flooring for people, it's just not our forte anymore. It's just getting too specialized. So I do it for myself, do it for a select bunch of clients. But there's a whole bunch of really super smart, super sharp contractors who have a big old box van with a diamond grinder and all the stuff to knock a garage floor out in 2 days, and it lasts a long time. So,
wow, cool.
Yeah.
Good deal.
Is that it, Chris Shank?
You know what? You have reached the bottom of what I know about floor coatings. You know how much I know? Enough to ask that question.
Exactly, man. No, I get you. And we do a bunch of random other floor coatings. Once in a while, people have us paint an old wooden floor or something. And what everybody focuses on is, what product do you use? I focus less on products and more about the theory of it. Something must be dry, it must be dust free, it must be stable, and it must have a little bit of tooth to it for something to adhere to. And I don't care what that is. It's a roofing shingle, a car door, a floor, a table, humans. If you want something to stick to it, do that, and then just pick the appropriate primer to stick to it. So I focus on the theory, but no, Chris, you're awesome. We had a great time at Expo. Next Expo is in Orlando next year, which is going to be super cool.
Yeah, really excited about that for sure. Laid a good foundation. Excited to see everybody again next year. So you'll see the build up happening again here pretty soon.
I love it, man. And say hi to everybody at the home office. And seriously, thank you for spending some Friday with me too. I always appreciate it.
Thanks. Absolutely. Good to see you, Nick.
All right. See you, man. Have a good week.
Bye.
Okay. So today we are going to focus on the next step in job costing, taking a deeper dive into labor and labor burden. So as this year progresses, remember, this is the year of mastering the basics. And we are going to take a deep dive into all things job costing and industry benchmarks. I truly believe that if all painters in the United States did simple job costing, which is nothing more than taking your revenue, figuring how much paint you used, and figuring how much labor you used, and then making based on that, every single paint company would be better off. They would deliver a better product to their clients, and they would be able to pay their employees more. So this is nothing more. Job costing is nothing more. It's a fancy word for basically figuring out if you're actually making money on this stuff and what you should be focusing on for problems. So before we get into that, Mike Danahy, how's it going, man? Good to see you. Oh, Nick May. Oh, thanks, man. We just texted a little bit before the show. Always good to talk to Nick May. Dominic Crowley from across the pond. Always love Dominic. George. Oh, man. Thanks, George, for watching from Chicago, too. So, all right. So let's take a deep dive into a little bit more. Let me pop my title back up here. And then let's hop into some spreadsheets. All your guys' favorites. So we're going to talk about this spreadsheet a little bit. There's a huge mistake that people make in figuring. Oh, Chris Shank just popped up down below. How do you block people on Live? All right, you guys can't see it, but there's a little queue where I keep all my windows that I'm ready to pop up. And Chris Shank now has the code for my show, and he can pop up anytime. So always love that guy. So, all right, people make a huge mistake in job costing. Job costing, you're focused on material and you're focused on labor. Material should usually be 15%. It's a very small portion of your revenue and expenses for the year. So focus on it, but don't overly focus. I focus on labor. Labor is about 40% of what you do. And I see a huge mistake that people make in calculating labor. Labor is not just wages. If you pay somebody $18 an hour and they work 100 hours, that the cost of that labor is not $1,800. There's a whole bunch of other things that go into it. So I'm going to get myself off the screen and I'm going to show you guys an actual example of my job costing and then how I calculate burden. This is an actual job from, I want to say it was last year. And this has been an evolving thing. Job costing is as simple as taking a paper estimate like I used to, working alone, flipping it over, and you write the revenue from the job here. You minus out the dollar amount from your materials. You add up how many gallons and how much you paid for, just a simple, quick math. And then you take your labor hours, whatever that number is when you minus out your materials, divided by the labor hours you have in a job. And that will give you a simple metric of how many dollars per hour did you generate on this job. Now, it's not a perfect method, but it actually gives you some sort of way to judge a job. The industry benchmark is around 55. So if you're at 70, you did well. Maybe you moved a little faster. Maybe the weather cooperated. If you went below 55, maybe there was something on a job site that you missed. So let's talk about, let's get All right, so I'm going to breeze through this thing once more. I am so sorry, everybody. It looks like the sound cut out there while I was doing my spreadsheet here. So I'm going to breeze through this stuff once more. All right, so here we go. I'm going to go deep dive again into the job costing here. So give me a second to reconfigure my windows, and I will. Sorry about that, guys. Let's get this one back in here. All right, it'll be just a second here. All right. All right, so if you guys are following along on the spreadsheets here, so we're going to go deep dive into job costing. And my apologies for cutting out there. It looks like we lost sound during this. So basically, this is what we want to do is track the actual cost of labor. And the actual cost of labor is not as simple as somebody's rate times hours. So this is one of the examples of my job costing on a job from last year. This was Crestfield High Rise. We have a block here for a callback. So if we get a callback on the job, we track that and we assign a revenue number to that. We're trying to calculate revenue per hour and gross profit. And the biggest things we look at are material and labor, these two columns here. So this job was a $9,300 job. I gave it a 131-hour budget. That's basically you remove materials from this, which is 15%, and you divide it by 60. I like to use $60 per hour as a budget goal. And that basically tells me that these painters need to get this job done in 131.8 hours for it to be a really good job. And now, let me check over to Be Live again. All right, can you guys hear me again here? All right, nice. It looks like we're back on here, so good. Sorry about the dead air, guys. I'll make a show note, but yeah, let's go back into the spreadsheet here. So what we track really closely is material and labor. Now, there is an actual thing called material burden that I track as well. For this project, we use some cover stain, advanced satin, advanced semi-gloss, duration home matte, and Sherwin-Williams CHB. This is not my list price for cover stain. This is my list price plus state and federal or state and local taxes and a tax that we pay, paint care tax. It's about $1 per gallon. And then we get to recycle paint because of it. It's a program in the state of Minnesota and various states. So again, this is not just the list price or the price that they say this is my discounted price. I include all taxes and everything else. So you get an accurate measurement of materials. So basically gallons, cost per gallon, including material burden, gives you a total. This is the total amount of materials that I used for this job. To calculate material percentage, I take this number, the total materials, and divide it by this, and that will give you my material percentage. So the industry average is 15. My production managers and painters overperformed on this one by almost half. It was a good job. Labor is the important one. So the biggest mistake that I see people make, and before I say that, I'm going to check over. All right, I assume that everybody can hear me. If not, let me know. I'm going to proceed into the deep dive into how to calculate burden. So if you just take, these are my painters here. If you take their rate times their hours, that will give you wages that you pay them. But if you only calculate labor by wages, you're going to be grossly miscalculating the cost of actually employing people because you don't just pay them a wage. There's all sorts of taxes and federal, state, and local and things like that. And that is called burden. So here's how I calculate burden. What is burden? It's this stuff. It's Social Security, it's Medicare, it's federal income tax, state income tax, federal unemployment, and state unemployment. And how do we get this stuff? This is super easy. I have a weekly payroll. I track my numbers weekly, and payroll just lists this stuff. So I'm a W-2 employee. The only complication with that is I have to back all my numbers out of the company numbers so that I get an accurate measurement of just my painters. And I'll show you, this is an example. This is actually my last week's payroll. We paid out about 10 grand in wages. The burden, this is the actual burden from that payroll. My accountant just sends me a report every week, and then I add up this burden, and it ends up being about $2,400, and my burden percent is 24%. So if you only calculate wages as your labor, you're going to be grossly undercalculating this stuff. This is the total cost that it took me to employ my painters last week. If we just went by wages, we would be off by $2,400. This is not nothing. This isn't something that's lost in the mix. This is a check that you have to cut to some state government, some federal government. If you don't calculate that, you're off by almost 25% on one of these things, or it's probably less than that, 18 to 20%, give or take. So here, the actual number, I use 25% as a good estimate. So when people say, how do you calculate burden? Well, number one, it's this. If you have these numbers, great. You can calculate your actual burden. From talking to other painters from across the country, for my labor market, talking to other painters here, for the people we employ and the type of business we run, 25% is a really, really good estimate of what it costs above and beyond wages to employ somebody. So when you look at my calculation here, we do 25%. We basically take wages times 25%, that adds that, and then the total labor is actually all of this, wages plus burden. So when you calculate labor, you can see that we went over on this job a little bit. You know, if the goal is 40, we did about 45. Saving grace was we didn't use that many materials, so it bumped us up. But here's the scenario. And before I do this, let's just make sure. All right, John Busick, well done. All right, so let's do an experiment here. These are auto-calculating numbers. They're all linked. Let's say we don't calculate burden. This right here, we take this out. I want you to pay attention to gross profit, and I want you to pay attention to labor here. So this now is under budget labor. It should have turned to green, but it did not. I copied this spreadsheet. I'll blame it on that. So you're looking at a job where you would say, man, we are absolutely killing it. But watch gross profit. If our goal is 40, if you actually calculate burden, you're almost, well, you're 9 points lower on your gross profit. So you could be miscalculating. If you do not make this labor burden calculation, or at least use it in your gross profit measures, you could be miscalculating your net profit at the end of the year by 9 or 10%, at least when you're looking at that particular job. Now, if most paint companies, and not most paint companies, if a really good paint company only makes 15% net profit and you're miscalculating it by 9 or 10, that is no bueno. So, all right, that is a deep dive into labor burden. And as always, if you guys email me at I will send you the spreadsheet. We can discuss it together, and we can take care of that. So, Mike Kelly, how's it going? I'm going to make a little note in the show notes here if anybody needs anything. So email me for the spreadsheet. All right, look at nickslavic.com. So wonderful, everybody. I appreciate everybody watching. Let me make sure I just don't have any. Oh, John Busick, you mentioned a really good point here. Marking up materials. I'd be curious to see who marks up materials and what do you mark it up by. And we do a little bit, but mainly because we verify all the colors, we source it, we deliver, and we take that burden on ourselves by guaranteeing the product. So we do mark it up a little bit. But that is just job costing. That one just is marking up materials is a completely different thing, which is, on the estimating side. This, I'm trying to figure out the actual costs I have into it. So, but thank you for that, John. I really appreciate it. That's a great point. So, all right, let's see what else we got here. Yeah, sorry about the audio cutting out, guys. Wonderful. Okay, well, that looks like about it here. Thanks, everybody, for watching. I'm going to punch out on family time. I'm headed out to the Slavic house. Supposedly, last hour, they started mudding this place. So I'm going to go out there and check it out because, as you guys know, this part makes or breaks a painter. And if I'm painting my own house and there's going to be lots of painters coming through it, this has got to be good. So I'm going to go out there and make sure everything's going well. And thanks, everybody, for watching. And we will see all of you next week.